So good morning. I'm afraid there's not a lot new I can tell you. It just feels that I'm back with my tribe. It feels that whatever I've heard is very common to what I've lived through in a different world. So I did my PhD here in 1994 with Juan and Walter. And I mean, somebody earlier already made a testimonial on the influence of Walter. Just as a small anecdote, my wife kept on telling me that for the rest of my life, I've been looking for somebody I could admire as much as I've admired Walter. So from that perspective, I'm still not done with my legacy here. I did one postdoc at NICEF with Jan Willem and Bert. I don't know whether Bert is, I think I saw him on the list, but so it's good to be back home. So since 16 years, I've been now working in audit, advisory, accountancy, all sorts of dirty words, where I have basically a double role. I lead here in Belgium for EY, Ernst & Young, a team of about 30 people active in the field of risk management. Next to me there's 5 other people with a quantitative PhD in that team, so I, little by little, am creating my own sort of ambience that, I wouldn't say it's academia, but you can feel, I mean, you heard a lot of testimonials of strange behavior, different characters. People in our company notice that we start having a group there with an own dynamic that is a little bit different. Next to that, I have another formal title that I lead our EMEA practice on quantitative advisory services. So fortunately, I kept that word quantitative. It's about 150 people. I mean, I guess probably 30, 40 easily with a PhD, others with very advanced degrees in quantitative and modeling interests. The word leader is not appropriate there. I mean, leading quants, people like yourselves with a strong mind is not something you can easily lead. It's more cajoling, getting them along, trying to create consensus, but that's sort of what it is. To give that point around, I'm since a bit more than 10 years also a visiting professor at the University of Ghent, where I teach on finance and the mathematics of finance. And to give you the flavor of that you really can never get rid of what it is to be an academic is that in that same year as I got that nomination as a visiting professor, I got nominated partner in our firm, which in our field is sort of a big achievement. But being nominated as a professor, even on a part-time basis, meant a lot more to me than that other part. So that has to be cut from the video because my colleagues don't know that. So what do we do for a living? We review and we develop models used for valuing complex financial instruments. So the value of complex structures that bankers and lawyers cook up. And also about, does an insurance company or a bank, do they have enough capital to survive and not present a challenge to society? So that's what we do for a living. Roughly speaking, I guess 80% of the mathematics that we cover actually you can cover with a solid bachelor level. So even though there's a lot of people with a PhD that get dragged into that field, the pure mathematics in its own right is not that over the top. It's a lot to do with stochastic analysis, statistical analysis and things like that. So a couple of things about that we've heard before. I mean, somebody spoke about the aesthetics and the beautiful and the beauty that we're seeking. I still have that. When people ask me to review a report, I'm still trying to see the argument as parsimonious as possible, not waste time, it needs to be clean. Do I get paid for that? No, but I just can't ignore that. That's what I am, that's what I do. And when I say do I get paid for that? No, because in our world, I mean, mind you, in the financial crisis, people value the bank on the back of an envelope overnight on a Saturday to a Sunday. So why on earth do we spend on a day-to-day basis hundreds and hundreds of pages with difficult equations and data to go very fine? I mean, it is something that keeps us busy, but the core, I mean, the truth out there is not as it is in physics. To a large extent, the truth is coarse, it's what somebody is willing to pay for it, and a lot of the detailed assumptions that we work on a daily basis disappear at crisis moments. Another part there is that a lot of what we do of the modeling is defined by legal texts. So things that your colleagues in European Parliament are writing around financial industry define what we're doing. So it's very easy. Whenever we need to look for a justification of an assumption, you go to a legal text and you say, well, the model has to have these characteristics. And then the discussion, you can shortcut part of the discussions there. What I think drives me is a lot of fascination, curiosity. I often compare myself to a biologist who's walking in a rainforest and who sees flowers, butterflies, and always sort of want to figure out what the next little thing on there is. I liked a lot, or I appreciated a lot working with lawyers, because good law is the same as good mathematics. Explain as many cases as possible with as few principles as possible. I mean, and that's something where you can learn a lot in this cross-fertilization. Couple of points in terms of good advice. I usually say it's meant as good advice. Whether it's good advice, it's for you to judge. I think I have to constantly watch out that I manage my extremes. As we've heard before, we bring a different perspective, but if you want to stay on having impact on the community, you should not always have the different perspective, and you should not always go sit on the extreme, because then you become completely irrelevant. So that's one thing that we have to keep in mind, or at least that I consciously have to keep in mind. My PhD did help me to see where my limits are. I know to a relatively good extent intellectually what I can do and what I cannot do. And in stress situations, when the problem arises, it gives you comfort and confidence to know what you can and you cannot do. The international mindset that I picked up on events like this is crucial. I work for clients in Paris. The next day I can have a client in London. Totally different cultures. It must be similar to what you're having at the European Commission. So these things you get prepared for in our job. Certainly a point of good advice would be you have to bridge the gap. Don't expect the others to come to you. You are the ones who have to translate the concepts into the language that the others understand. That's when you're going to have impact. And then last, again, recommend meant as good advice. If I were to have to go if I would be just have to start again, I would probably look at things like big data, predictive analytics. That's very close to our mindset, trying to figure out things that are happening. Probably would look at neuroscience, biotechnology, where number crunching things open a lot of things. But really, at the heart of hearts, I would join Pixar and make movies that make everybody happy. Thank you.